Welcome to the next video in which we will be doing database interaction with Android application. What is the database and what are their uses and how we can connect with that DB for this Android application. So just to give a brief introduction, the database is basically kind of organized collection of data in which we store data in terms of tables and columns. So as the introduction says, the database is an organized collection of data that allows you to access and manipulate retrieved data. So understanding queries is must as of now for doing interaction with database along with Android. So I would specify that at least brief knowledge of how to write the queries so that we can write these in Android application and retrieve the data from the database. Next comes the mastering CRUD operations. We will be going with these operations in coming slides and doing the CRUD operations. So we will be doing create, read, update and delete. These are the basic fundamentals of CRUD operations, and we will be doing these operations in our coming video tutorials, and we will be mastering the CRUD operations with Android applications. Little bit tricky part is there that we need to write some boilerplate codes in Android application with Java. So we will be writing those codes, and step by step we will be understanding how we can connect with database and how we can go with the create, read, update and delete, all the basic operations of CRUD using database in Android applications. And last, one more thing in terms of theoretical part is that similar to JPA or CRUD repository or those stuff which we generally use in Java applications, we go with SQLite we generally say, or someone say SQLite in Android development application. So this is a kind of repository layer, I would say, which generally interacts with databases in Android applications. So we will be exploring the SQLite and how using SQLite we will be creating the database management system in Android application and go with the CRUD operations. So SQLite is very popular nowadays in Android application, and you must know what is SQLite, and you should perform the CRUD operation using SQLite only. So let's go to the Android application and see how we can develop the projects using SQLite and database interaction, and how we can retrieve all the create, read, update and delete operations in database. So this is the last application where we had created a video player application, and in which we had shown how we can play the different videos and on the basis of button click. So now let's create a fresh application because we are going to interact with database. So lots of boilerplate codes will be required. So I'm going to a new project, and in this new project again I'm going to select empty activity, click on next. I will write and draw DB POC, and let's go with some previous version of Android like 4.1. The more earlier you will select, the more chances that it will be played on different devices, because many people will be having previous Android versions. So if you go with the latest Android version selection in this, those applications will not be played in the older version of Android. So I'm selecting this Android application, and let's create Java and my Android.poc and click on finish. So my new application will open. Before that, let me close all this emulator and previous projects, and let's open this. So as you can see, my Gradle build is starting and it will open soon. It will take a little bit of time, and also as you can see, now it has come up with all the details here. If I go and see, this is the main activity in which onCreate application onCreate method is there, and here main activity is here, which is currently loading, and it has now loaded. As of now, let the text view will be hello world only. We are not going to do any front-end application. Rather than, let's go and create some backend code where database will be used for CRUD operations. For this, any database call, first thing is we require the repository layer like in JPA and all. So here I said SQLite open handler is there, which connects with SQLite, and for that we should create an repository layer, I would say, and let's create a class, name it as database helper class. So generally people create like this only, database helper, or anything. If any operation you want to do with certain table creation, then you can create on basis of table specific. So I can create something like database helper and click on finish, and I need to extend through SQLite operation handler, open handler. So this SQLite open handler will open, and it will ask me to import two methods. So I'll add an implemented method, onCreate and onUpgrade. So what it says, when you are creating any database helper, you should create something, and on any upgradation you should do certain operation on any upgrade. So just like an creation of a table or updation of a table or something. So we have created this, and what it says, create constructor matching super. So I will create a constructor also which will match with the super. So I'll created a SQLite with version. So I created this. So in this I can reduce it to little bit lesser extent and go with the database name, database version, and context only. So let me remove these part, and because there might be chances that it will be nullable. So the thing is that we want database version, we want SQL cursor factory. I don't want this as of now, make it null. And then we want the DB name and also database context. So context is fine, we want this context to be passed here, and let the other thing will be passed directly in this super method only. For this I'm going to provide certain constant fields which I will be using in coming slides or coming video tutorials. For this I'm going to initialize public static final string. Let me copy it three, 4 times, so that I will be requiring this for providing few more constants here. And here in this string part, let me provide this as table name. So let's create the table with something like employee only. Generally we go with employee for certain starting of POC. So I will say employee table, and let the name of the table be employee. So first thing is table, second goes with the ID. So what type of ID I want? Let it be emp underscore ID, and let it be emp underscore ID, or let it be ID only to make it much easier. Then comes the name, and let's go with the age and name. So I'll say emp underscore name. So it will be a column inside the employee table, and it will be emp name, or make it name only. And let's go with the other part, emp underscore age. Generally an employee can have the age, so age, let's provide the age will be age only. And let's go with the database name. So for that I will say db underscore name, and let's provide the database name as employee dot db. So whatever db you are providing, just provide dot db in the end. Then let's go with DL versioning. Generally it asks for the DL versioning. Either I can provide it directly here, or I can provide in constant. Let's go with the constant only because this is the best practice. So this dot int db underscore version, and let's provide it as 1 only. So we have provided db version, directly we can provide it here. We have provided this as a factory part. So for factory, make it null as of now, we don't require it as of now. Let's go with the db name. So this is asking for the name. Name is nothing but the name of the db. If you hover over it, it will ask create local variable name. For that I've provided db name. So this is how we can create database helper class. And one few more thing, we need to have on create and on update, on upgrade. So for on create and on upgrade, we should have certain query. So that needs to be written here. For this I will write db, which I am writing, and for db the database should be called first, and then only it will be called inside it. So for calling the database, let it be SQLite database dot, I will say execute SQL. Inside this query needs to be written for creation of table. So for that, let's provide a string constant, and let's the name be create table, emp table, create employee table. Create employee table, I will directly write create table, just like the query which we generally write. And after this, the table name will be this only, emp table, which I am going to create right now. Then comes the second part, where I will be writing this as this syntax. It will start from this syntax in which database details will be printed. So first thing will be the ID, or make it emp ID, and emp ID will be a type of integer. So for that, let's provide it as space, its type is integer dot primary key. primary key auto. So it will be primary key auto generate auto increment. It will be auto increment. So this is how this will be auto incremented generally with what we write. And then comes the next part. Is second part is the creation of employee name. So emp name, and the emp name will be a type of text. It will be not null. Then comes the next part, will be emp age, and this employee age will be nothing but integer only. So it will be integer only, and after this integer we can provide it as a semicolon and can close the string part of this creation of table. So this is how we have written create table this employee, in which the details will be employee ID, it will be type of integer, and primary key auto increment. Then it will be employee name text not null, and also employee age integer. Let this also be not null, but generally integer does not contain data, so I make it not null only as of now. So now we have created a query, and this query will be used inside on create method. So whenever this creation will happen of database helper on create, when we will call, it will be created, and once this is created, a table will be created inside this employee DB. So how this is happening, we are providing the database here in the super method, and this implementation of on create of this SQLite open helper only is using that database which we have provided in the super method and executing this query inside that database. So this query of creation of table of employee is being executed in this SQLite table with this database name. Now on upgrade is there, so we will simply say that SQLite database dot execute, again same method. So here I will say drop the table if it exists. So I will say drop table if exists, and after that the table name emp table. And since we are going for upgrade, we will drop the table, and after that we will call on create. So this is how a new table will be created for that. So on create we will be passing the database only. So let's provide this database here. The same database will be called from here, and it will be executed in that particular database where we are calling from on upgrade. So we have created a database helper method, and this helper method will be used inside the other activities where we will be performing the data. So for performing those details, we need a database manager where we will be creating those database queries. For that, let's create a database manager. This is a kind of service layer, I would say, in if you have worked on Spring or some other parts. So this is a kind of service layer which I'm going to create right now. So this is nothing but database manager. So I will say DB manager, and in this DB manager I will write few methods, and here like Spring or something we do auto app, but in this scenario we directly call that method and use it here. So I will say private database manager database helper here, and also we require private context from Android, where it will pull out the current context and can use it in our current code. So I'll import that class. Also we require SQLite database, so I will say database, and since SQLite is an interface, so its implementation will be database helper only. So even if I am calling this interface, it will go and execute using this database helper only if the method is not there. So last thing is comes that when we are calling this database manager, we should call the open and close method so that the database connection will be closed. So we should require to create database manager open and close method. So I will say public, it will return database manager only, and it will be an open method to open any database connection, somewhat like that. So I will say database helper, which we have created this database helper, or I would say database helper, and I will call new database helper, and inside this I will pass the context which will be created here in the database manager main method. So this database manager, public database manager constructor I need to create. So I'll say public database manager or DB manager, and in this I'll pass the context. So context will be passed here. So context will be the context which will be passed here. So this dot context is called context. So the context which I am passing in this database manager will be used here and will be passed in the database helper. And here I'll pass this database helper, and just understand, make it C, and this will be the context only. And I will say the database. So database is nothing but SQLite will be given using database helper dot get writable database, in which we will write certain things. So for that only we require to open a connection using database helper and using that context in which SQLite is there, and simply we will return this, the whole database manager only. So this database manager will be returned from here using open method. Using close method we will close the connection. For that we will write public void, because we are closing, so we don't require to return anything. So I'll write close, and inside this I will write database helper dot close. That's it. So what we have done till now is that we have created a repository layer kind of thing using database helper, where this is interacting with database using SQLite helper, in which we are creating a table or updating a table once this database helper is being used. And using this helper as a kind of repository layer, we are going to database manager, which is a kind of service layer in reference to the other projects of Spring. We are using database manager to create connection, open a connection using database helper, and write those using database helper.get write database, and also close the connection. So we will be using database manager in our main activity instead of directly calling database helper. So for this, let's call this in the main method, where I'm calling this main activity, which will start when the application will load. So onCreate is the first method which will be called. So I'll write private database or DB manager or DB manager. So this database manager will be called inside the main method. So I will say database manager is equal to new database manager. Inside this I'll pass the context. So I will say here I will pass this only. This will be kind of context which will be passed in the database manager. And after that, once an execution will be required, we will be doing with this only. So till then we have seen how we have connected our database manager and pass the current main activity. And in the current main activity, this database manager is created using context, and using this database helper class we are executing creation of tables and upgradation. This is how we have created different layers. Now in the coming video tutorials we will see the CRUD operations. We will start with create, then update, delete, and fetching of the records. So let's see in the coming slides.